The riffs that propelled Poison to the top of the Billboard charts were written by CC DeVille, who was initially chosen to take Slash's position. However, it was he who, during a live performance at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards, dropped his guitar jack and played the wrong song, ruining everything in a matter of minutes. He was expelled from the band that same evening after getting into a brawl backstage. However, happiness never happens on its own. Drugs, alcohol, ego, and nights of screaming, hallucinations, and solitude are all part of it. In the world he formerly ruled, CC went from being a shining star to an outsider. But that tumble wasn't the end of his story. Who exactly is CC DeVille? Is he a victim of fame, a reckless artist enmeshed in the tumult of parties and drugs, or just a Brooklyn boy with a guitar and an ambition too lofty for the harsh realities of Hollywood? Let's investigate CC's life. DeVille, a setback followed by a fresh start. A difficult route where the darkness indoors was never completely concealed by the stage lights. A CC DeVille in the final chapter lost everything once, but never gave up on regaining it. Childhood. Bruce Anthony Johannes DeVille was born in Brooklyn, New York, on May 14, 1962. He was from a Jewish working-class household. His father worked in customer service, and his mother owned a store. Despite their lack of wealth, they tried to provide their son with a secure upbringing in a neighborhood where every night there was the sound of arguing from the apartment next door, the smell of gasoline, and the honking of cars. Bruce's life was quite difficult. Bruce frequently remarked, "I'm a weird, lonely kid who's always lost in my own world." Bruce shut himself in his room with the radio and piles of old Kiss, Rolling Stones, Lou Reed, and David Bowie recordings while the other kids played baseball in the backyard. He got inspiration for rebellion from these odd painters. His parents discreetly separated when he was 6 years old. There was only quiet that wounded a sensitive boy's heart. No shouting or courtroom brawls. He once remarked, "I learned to scream through the guitar because no one at home ever really heard me." His mother gave him his first guitar for Christmas, and it quickly became his best companion and his sole means of escaping loneliness. When Bruce was 5 years old, he started learning how to play the guitar on his own. There was a great desire to accomplish it, but no formal training. He worked out so hard that he developed blisters on his fingertips. He copied every motion he saw musicians make on TV and studied the inserts in record sleeves to master chords. The stage was the only place he had felt genuinely noticed, and he turned music into his church. Bruce wasn't stupid, but he didn't perform well in school either. He was intelligent, but rebelliously so. He preferred dissecting musical patterns over solving mathematical puzzles. After high school, he enrolled at New York University to study music, but the rigors, regulations, and pressure to perform couldn't stop a spirit that desired to defy every rule. His family was disappointed when he dropped out of school after just a year. However, Bruce believed it was the only way to remain authentic. After a while, he left Brooklyn and ceased using Bruce Johannes. With just a few $100s and an old guitar, he traveled to Los Angeles. Dangerous frauds and bright stage lights abound in the city. There, Bruce was born anew as CC. DeVille is no longer the Brooklyn lost boy. Now he wants to burn on a stage like a fire. Early life. All CC DeVille had when he relocated to Los Angeles in the early 1980s was a beat-up guitar, a few unfinished demos, and a firm belief that he was destined for fame. In addition to being the epicenter of rock and roll on that particular day, Los Angeles was also a combat zone. Every pub and street corner appeared to be an unofficial tryout for the Hollywood dream. For a brief moment of fame, hundreds of guitarists were willing to die on stage. CC leapt from one band to another. No contract, no name, and no obvious future. He started out with a band called Screaming Mimmies and later joined St. James, a respectable glam rock group, but wherever he went, he always had the same insane energy and defiant attitude. There was a well-planned strategy behind all that commotion, but people will never forget DeVille's loud, arrogant guitar that was always poised to explode up. They may not remember the songs from modest shows around the Sunset Strip. Chi-Chi. He was obviously not Yngwie Malmsteen or Steve Vai. He was more than just a techie. He continued to be unique. He employed the guitar as a storytelling tool, an extension of his body, and a performance instrument. Many of the actors in the scene were excellent but unmemorable. DeVille, on the other hand, was unavoidable. Then the opportunity presented itself. In order to select a replacement for Matt Smith as lead guitarist, the expanding band Poison held tryouts in Los Angeles in 1985. There was a famous name on the list, Slash, who went on to become well-known with Guns N' Roses. However, Slash did not make the cut. Poison's glamorous appearance, complete with wigs, makeup, and a theatrical touch, didn't go with his tougher manner. CC DeVille entered at the precise moment. In addition to playing a wild audition, he also developed a distinctive riff that would later be the well-known beginning to Poison's big hit, Talk Dirty to Me. After the fact, Bret Michaels said, "As soon as CC hit that riff, I knew we were hearing something different." Messy and raw, but alive, CC was picked. He went from being a recluse living in CD clubs to a full-fledged part of a band on the rise. Plus, he brought more than just his guitar. He brought chaos, contradictions, an extreme way of life, and the first sparks of a fire that would eventually devour the band. Poison has a successful business. CC joined Poison in 1985. DeVille joined glam metal during its golden age, a time when everything was over the top. The guitars, the hair, the feelings, and the revolt. He wasn't just the lead guitarist. He was also the most dangerous member of the Foreman band. He was what made Poison stand out from all the hairspray bands and foundation-covered faces. Even though it wasn't made on a big budget and didn't have high hopes, their first record, Look What the Cat Dragged In, 1986, was a big hit. CC was the one who wrote the famous opening riff to Talk Dirty to Me, Poison's biggest hit and an anthem of the Glow Metal era. He also helped write songs like I Want Action and I Won't Forget You, which showed that he could write simple but powerful melodies that young fans at the time couldn't get enough of. His hair was curled, he wore tight leather clothes, and his BC lots of guitar CC. He wasn't just a singer, he was a show that came to life. Poison came out in the late 1980s as rising rock royalty. Their second record, Open Up and See, came out in 1988. With over 5 million records sold, it made them one of the best-selling bands in America. By this time, DeVille was fully in charge of his part. He continued to leave his mark with flashy riffs and solos and Fallen Angel, Nothing But a Good Time, and especially the #1 ballad on the Billboard Hot 100, Every Rose Has Its Thorn. DeVille was the soul behind the emotional guitar breaks. Even though he wasn't the main songwriter, they kept getting hits, which turned a cheesy love song into a raw anthem of sadness for a generation. Poison's third record, Flesh and Blood, released in 1990, was an attempt at musical maturity. It mixed hard rock with more serious stories. Even though things were getting worse in the band, DeVille was a big part of making songs like Unskinny Bop, Life Goes On, and Something to Believe and sound the way they did. He didn't need fancy leads. Just a few notes played at the right time with the right feel were enough to make people remember the song. He was known for going overboard, but he taught others how to be restrained. CC the engine that Poison used was called DeVille. On stage, he jumped on amps, spun around, aimed his guitar like a gun at the crowd, played with his teeth, and broke every rule. He lived in the present and drew people into a world where rock wasn't just music, but a loud, bold way of life. He had more stage presence than anyone else in the band. He was the purest form of Poison. Beautiful, crazy, and not sorry for it. But right then, behind the lights and makeup, the first crack showed up. DeVille was getting deeper into a lifestyle that he couldn't control. He would leave the recording sessions to go to the bathroom for hours at a time. During shows, he and Bret Michaels fought over set lists, noise levels, and even who was the real face of Poison. CC's unstable personality, which used to be one of his draws, had become intolerable. Even so, CC DeVille did a lot to help Poison become a glam metal legend by shaping the band's sound, image, and irresponsibility. In the US, the band's first 3 records with him sold more than 15 million copies, putting them in the same league as big bands like Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, and Metallica. The high lasts a long time, though, and the crash is always painful. And for CC DeVille, the end didn't happen slowly. No one saw it coming. It happened all at once, and was shown live to millions of people, clash and firing at its peak. In the early 1990s, the lighting that had made Poison a rock star was now blazing down on the people who had lit it. The band was still doing well on the charts, but a war was getting worse behind the scenes every day. And CC was right in the middle of it all. DeVille. The fight between DeVille and lead singer Bret Michaels got worse and worse until it could not be fixed. Their arguments were not just about music. Someone wants to keep the natural raw chaos. In order to grow, the other band leaned toward a younger hard rock style. Small things caused them to fight who got more attention on stage, whether the guitar made it hard to hear the vocals. They even fought over who got to go into the studio first. And when both people were high on cocaine and hard booze, even small disagreements could turn into full-on fights. In his own words, Bret Michaels said in the book, "Nothing but a good time." CC was high and intoxicated. He struck me. I returned the blow. During the brawl, it became so loud that I could no longer hear my own singing. Everyone was growing tired of it, and nobody was sober enough to stick together. Arguments that escalated into violence during the 1991 tour of Flesh and Blood marked the height of the situation. DeVille and Michaels got into a brawl behind the scenes at a performance in New Orleans. The situation was so awful that the band had to postpone their subsequent performances. Rumors that Poison was splitting up and that everyone knew about it began to circulate after the news. CC DeVille was the bomb that detonated when it was about to do so. And it did go off after that. On stage at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards, one of the largest music spectacles ever broadcast on American television, Poison played their new single, Unskinny Bop. Millions of viewers watched in real time. But as the music started, nobody moved. Instead of DeVille's new song, their old hit, Talk Dirty to Me, was playing. This was no error. The band had worked hard to maintain their professional appearance and their advertising, so it was a public slap in the face. During the performance, DeVille's guitar jack fell loose, and everything went terribly wrong. The noise ceased. The program collapsed. The band had to be reintroduced by host Arsenio Hall, a first in the show's history. DeVille and Michaels immediately got into another argument backstage. Blood might have been spilt if security hadn't intervened. There was no actual speech or band meeting that evening. CC DeVille was expelled from Poison right away. The issues worsened a few months later on a Saturday night during a live pirate radio show. Before DeVille entered and scolded Bret Michaels for his public remarks, the conversation was going well. The Los Angeles Times recorded the conversation and used caustic language. "You stated to USA Today that you were looking for an artist that did not use drugs. Drugs have nothing to do with what you stated about me. I meant someone who could maintain composure. Furthermore, you claimed that you were no longer in command." The on-air altercation was never broadcast on television. However, the tape immediately rose to fame in the music industry, an indication that one of the 1980s worst founding teams had finally disbanded. Following that, CC left Poison. The band moved on after adding Richie Kotzen as a guitarist, and DeVille put a lot of effort into his solo project, Samantha 7, to keep himself from being forgotten. However, it appeared at the time that there was no way to mend the rift between him and Poison, particularly Michaels. Time and music, as usual, were the only answers to the query. Was it the beginning, the fall, the rebirth, the reunion, or was it truly the end? The dissolution of the night Poison following the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards was witnessed by many. Without a word, CC DeVille left the band, leaving behind a ruined career and a tarnished reputation brought on by drugs, alcohol, and violence. Rebels are occasionally given the freedom to roam. He was referred to as a spy at the time, but not an artist. Having the attention that was previously on you turn away from you is the worst thing that can happen in rock. CC drifted aimlessly for the following few years. He formed Samantha 7 on his own and released a single album in 2000. Though it was only a faint reflection of what he had previously created with Poison, there were some positive aspects about it. In the few conversations he had, DeVille made an effort to remain upbeat. It was simple to see. Beneath the typical sarcasm lay a weary soul struggling with loneliness and confusion. What little glam metal remained was destroyed by the grunge movement that emerged in the middle of the 1990s. The majority of the bands with the unkempt hair and makeup had ceased their performances. After that, an unexpected event occurred. Previously believed to be extinct, the band Poison announced that they would be reuniting, and the first person they called was CC DeVille. Nobody believed DeVille could do what he had. He became more sober. Slowly and quietly, he returned to being clear. After attending therapy and having frank conversations with himself, he eventually received a call from Ricky Rocket. There was no glamour, no stage lights, and no stars. "I have a brief inquiry. Are you all right?" For the Greatest Hits tour, Poison and CC DeVille reunited. The return was unsuccessful. After everything, you had to prove that you could still be friends, forgive, and go on. For the first time in years, CC took the stage with his ancient guitar and cautious gaze. Then the tears started. He didn't miss a single note this time, and people hadn't forgotten about him. However, the road to rehabilitation is never easy. DeVille wanted Samantha 7 to open for Poison on tour, which is why things went south once more in 2000. DeVille left the band without a word, upset, and Bret Michaels replied bluntly, "No, it has to be all Poison if it's Poison." Ultimately, Michaels recalled, "I drove him back. We chuckled, embraced, and said, 'See you in a few weeks.' I never heard from him again." However, DeVille returned only 2 weeks later. Not to apologize, but to be honest. Poison can perform for 18,000 people, or my band can play for just 18. There is no doubt that he and the band succeeded. The number of battles was irrelevant. Without DeVille, CC Poison would not have been the same. At this gathering, resistance was no longer the focus. The topic was letting go. They gave up attempting to transform one another. They figured out how to coexist despite their differences. DeVille was quieter, sober, and listening to music with a sense of peace he had never experienced before. Rather than stirring up trouble, he was rekindling an old passion. He is now extremely cautious about the heat that previously burned him. Since then, CC DeVille has played with Poison on numerous large-scale tours, compilation albums, and reunion performances that revived the glam metal genre. But this time, he was seen as more than just an artist. He was viewed as living evidence that certain flames should be controlled to prevent fatalities if they cannot be extinguished. Life off the stage. In the past, CC DeVille was the most outrageous rock star someone could be. A vast list of mishaps, endless parties, and failed romances. He could barely recall many of them. Beneath that arrogant facade, however, was a spirit that constantly longed for genuine connection. During his prime, DeVille seldom had this. After quitting narcotics and resuming his use of Poison in the mid-1990s, CC gradually distanced himself from the spotlight by opting for a healthier, less conspicuous lifestyle. In addition to being exhausted, he was also experiencing a change in his life. In 2007, DeVille and Shannon Malone, his longtime girlfriend, welcomed their first child together. He was given the name Valentino. After viewing his infant, a well-known musician realized that his life would never be the same. Neither a tour nor a hit song made the difference. DeVille eventually came open about it. He moved to a quiet house by the sea in California after leaving the bustle of Hollywood. "I want to spend time with my family, send my kids off at school, and play music for enjoyment rather than because I have to, as opposed to week-long parties." DeVille's quiet partner is Shannon. Although she hasn't made many headlines, she is renowned for supporting him during the crisis and his recuperation. She was more than just his girlfriend. Since she had a family, she was the one who prevented him from going insane once more. For a rock singer who was once in a lot of trouble, CC hasn't been involved in many romantic scandals, which is practically unheard of. Even though he never legally married Shannon to DeVille, he said in a VH1 interview, it was still a full home, a place where he didn't have to perform, didn't have to wear the mask of an artist. He lived as a father, a partner, and a man who had been through hell and chosen to keep the good parts of himself in a rock world where early deaths, broken relationships, and personal tragedies were common. CC, he may be rebelling one last time by choosing to live a kind life and slow down. This time, though, it's to stay true to who he is, his present life and memory. Now in his 60s, OCC DeVille isn't the guitarist who jumped across the stage in shiny leather clothes like he did in Poison's Head Day. But he hasn't gone away either. On the contrary, DeVille is different now. He is more grown, quiet, and deep than ever. He lives in California with his girlfriend Shannon Malone and their son Valentino. There, the light of everyday life has replaced the bright light of fame. Between 2024 and 2025, CC DeVille has stayed very involved with music, even though he doesn't go on big trips anymore. Poison had planned a big reunion tour with all of the original members, including DeVille, in 2025. But the plan was shelved when lead singer Bret Michaels took some time off to focus on his health, especially managing his diabetes. The band has said they will come back in 2026. Though to honor the 40th anniversary of their famous record Look What the Cat Dragged In, and DeVille will be an important part of that important event. DeVille hasn't been quiet even when he's not on stage. He still takes part in local events and charity shows, and he especially supports the musical career of his son Valentino, who is said to be very much like his dad and love playing the guitar and performing. He also stays busy on social media where he shares everyday moments, talks to fans directly, and holds on to something he lost, a real bond. CC DeVille is one of the most important people in glam metal history, even though he isn't the best guitarist professionally. He made the riffs for songs like Talk Dirty to Me and Unskinny Bop, which are what Poison sounds like and are also the sound of a whole group of musicians who grew up with MTV, Hairspray, and all-night parties. DeVille's wild, raw, instinctive style of play went against academic norms and showed that feeling and personality can be more important than technique. He turned the image of the rebellious guitarist into stage art and made every show a spiritual and visual explosion. His most important memory is not his platinum records or awards, but the fact that he made it through the storms, grew up, and never lost who he was. He went from being fired for playing the wrong song on live TV to becoming a sober man who lives simply and is devoted to his family. Few rock artists from his time can still remember the whole story. People still think of him when they hear a Poison tune anywhere today. No, not as a great player, but as CC DeVille, a live reminder of a wild and fiery time that never gave up. As CC DeVille quietly ends the noisiest part of his life, he leaves behind more than just songs that became musical icons of the time. He leaves behind a lively story of falling, getting back up, and growing up. His life shows us what to do. You can start over even if everything goes wrong on the large stage. If you're brave enough to look at yourself, getting things right wasn't important. CC, it took a lot of courage for DeVille to live her life as she really was, to fight, and to make things right. He is live proof of something that seems easy to understand. Just making it through the day is a big win sometimes. CC DeVille will always be an important part of glam metal, a unique band in rock history. For people who have ever felt like they had gone too far to turn back, what do you think about CC DeVille's exciting but dangerous journey? What was the most memorable part of his work for you? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Click like and subscribe to help us find more stories about music stars that haven't been told before. Thanks for seeing. We'll see you next time.